So I want to welcome everyone here today. Our session is on Exchange Server 2007 SP1. My name is Jason Mayans, and I'm the Director of Program Management for Exchange. And I'm very excited to be here today in Barcelona. My family ancestry and heritage is actually Catalan, so it's very nice for me to be able to visit here and kind of understand where my family came from. And I'm also very excited that we're able to do this on the first day, the first breakout session, when everybody is still awake, engaged, very interested in what we're here to say, and is not yet suffering from the effects of death by PowerPoint, which you'll get to towards the end of the week. So I want to have my colleague introduce himself as well. So Ray.
Hello. So I'm Ray Moorman. I'm a group product manager with the Exchange Server team as well. And today what we're going to look at is Exchange Server 2007 Service Pack 1. Now mind you, this session is a 200 level session. So we'll cover off Exchange Server, and then we're going to go through and have questions and answers at the end. So as we go through the presentation, if you end up with some questions, please hold them, and then you can go to the mics. We'll give you plenty of time at the end. Now, how many of you here have experience with Exchange 2007, either through training or other sessions? Wow, lovely, great. And then how many of you actually have deployed Exchange 2007? Good, healthy number. Great, so you're in the right session, because although we're going to touch on some Exchange 2007 points, the session is really going to be about Service Pack 1. So we were expecting and hoping that you'd have a base knowledge of 2007, and looks like you do, so that'll be great. So we're going to, through this session, we're going to learn about some of the new features. We're also going to go through a number of demonstrations of scenarios that are enabled by Service Pack 1. And we're going to also, since this is the first session for the Unified Communications and Exchange track, we're going to point out some other sessions that would be that would be of interest to you based on things that we've shown. And at the end, also, we'll leave you with how to go and get the trial bits and start running it in your organization. So with Exchange Server 2007, just to get an overview of where we were coming from, we had three themes. So first, anywhere access. And this is really focused on your end users. This is primarily around giving that rich Outlook experience that your users love, and having that available on not just the desktop through Outlook, but also on the web through Outlook Web Access, and then through your mobile phone as well. We also introduced unified messaging, and we introduced just recently with Office Communications Server 2007, and we've introduced the better together and integration between unified messaging and Office Communicator. Next area is built-in protection, and this is really around protecting the business. And it goes beyond just the traditional protection with antivirus and anti-spam, and gets into compliance scenarios, being able to protect your company and comply with either internal corporate regulations or government regulations on your business. And lastly, the operational efficiency for you as the administrator. This is the area that we invested heavily in the deployment architecture, invested heavily in the 64-bit architecture and optimizing for 64-bit to reduce costs in the organization, and then also introduced a new management paradigm with the Exchange Management Console and the Exchange Management Shell, and having all of that business logic in the shell.
So that previous slide talks about the general Exchange 2007 themes, but I want to drill a little bit into Service Pack 1 itself. And so when we went through the process of planning Service Pack 1, which will be available by the end of this year, we really took feedback that our customers gave us between the Exchange 2007 betas and the release of Exchange 2007. And the timeline you see below reflects the time that it took us to take that feedback, consider what was most important, and implement those changes into Service Pack 1. Exchange 2007 was a major release for us, and we rewrote major portions of the system. So we have a completely brand new Outlook Web Access in Exchange 2007. We completely updated the management model with a new console experience and a new command line experience. We made changes in the core server architecture to support 64-bit and take advantage of more memory and the 64-bit architecture. But with all of these changes, there were things in Exchange Server 2007 that were taken out from 2003. And we got feedback from our customers about which one of those was most important for us to add back into Service Pack 1. And so some of the things you'll see here, like public folders and Outlook Web Access, reflects that feedback we got from customers that they need this capability in Outlook Web Access. Things like increased security for mobile workers. We heard more about the increasing security needs of our customers when it comes to mobile device access. Things such as high availability also expand on the core feature set that we delivered in Exchange 2007. We invested in Service Pack 1 beyond just unified messaging into what we call unified communications. I'll talk about some of those scenarios in a bit. And lastly, we ensured that Exchange as a platform grew with your business as you invested in things such as Windows Server 2008 and Windows Vista. So I'm going to drill down into one of those three pillar areas that you saw at the beginning that Ray talked about. And the first one of those is what we call anywhere access. So Exchange Server 2007 is the best server to deliver a rich Outlook client experience. And anywhere access is about taking that rich Outlook client experience and then providing that desktop experience also through a web browser, for example, with Outlook Web Access. Maybe you're at the airport traveling using a kiosk. Maybe you're visiting family and using your mom's computer. And you can still have a very rich experience interacting with your email through Outlook Web Access. You can drag and drop messages in Outlook Web Access. You can use a server-side autocomplete cache when you're typing out your mail. Name drops down so you can fill that out. You can set up your out-of-office message when you're away. A lot of the things that you're used to using Outlook on your desktop, you can also do through Outlook Web Access. So Exchange Server 2007 SP1 also introduces public folder access through Outlook Web Access. And again, we heard from customers that many of which were thinking about moving more of their document management into SharePoint, but they still have many important documents and use public folders as a very important tool in their business. And they need access to those documents and that information while they're away from their desks. Another way that you can experience Outlook is through a mobile device using ActiveSync, or even through a regular voice phone using Outlook Voice Access. So with Outlook Voice Access, you can call in using any phone, using either voice or a touch-tone system, and find out when your next meeting is, or have some of your emails read to you over the phone. It provides a very kind of quick way to get access to your information in Exchange no matter where you are. You know, this Outlook Voice Access, we've invested further in that in Service Pack 1 with integration between our solution and Office Communications Server 2007. So with Exchange Server 2007 Unified Messaging plus Office Communications Server 2007, we deliver a complete unified communication solution. So what I want to do first in these demos, and I'm going to go to a demo next, is take a view of some of the anywhere access capabilities that we've added in Service Pack 1 and look at that from an end user perspective and how that increases end user productivity. So I'm going to switch over here to my demo machine, and you can see I've got Outlook Web Access up and loaded. And you know, perhaps I'm traveling, and so I wanted to check my mail quickly using Outlook Web Access. And I see, thank you. Thank you. And I see, so now I have Outlook Web Access up and running, and I see that I have a number of new messages to read. I've got one from Becky here asking me how the trip is going. Oh, and I've got a bunch of mail here from Ray. Let's see. Urgent, please read. Why aren't you answering my mail? Act now urgent. Whatever. Okay, I'm just going to select Ray's mail here. It's probably not all that important. Delete it. Kind of throw that away. He's kind of been annoying me lately. And in fact, you know, because of that, when I'm traveling, I just want to focus on the important stuff. I'm going to go use the new capability in Service Pack 1 within Outlook Web Access to create an inbox rule. So I'm going to go into Outlook Web Access, and I'm going to create a new rule. And I'm going to say, if this message was sent or received from this person. I'm going to click on here, and that brings up the address book where I'm going to pick out Ray. Okay, and add his name. If this message was received from Ray, I want to, I don't know, delete the message. I think that's good enough. And go ahead and save that. And so what this means is you don't have to be using Outlook on your desktop to set up a rule. I can do it very easily through Outlook Web Access with Service Pack 1. Now, having done that, I'm going to switch over to the contacts feature. And within the contacts, I've created a personal distribution list. This, again, is a new feature in Outlook Web Access in Service Pack 1, the ability to create and manage personal distribution lists. So I actually have this distribution list that I created called People That Annoy Me. And because I was getting all of these mails from Ray, I'm actually going to go ahead and add Ray. You can see the nice autocomplete behavior there. So I'll just hit the Tab key. I'm going to go ahead and add Ray to this list of contacts.
And that's a server-side autocomplete, so it doesn't matter what machines he's running on, he'll always get that autocomplete of my name.
Right. So I'm going to add him to this list of people that annoy me, and then whenever I get some email, chain letter, or some other junk, I'll probably forward it to that list. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over into my inbox, and then actually, so I noticed something in the lower right-hand corner of the screen here. And if you look down here, I have a blinking light, and it says I have a new voicemail message. So I'm going to double-click on that. And this is a new integration feature with Office Communicator and Exchange Server 2007, is that it can provide a voicemail indicator if you're using Exchange Unified Messaging. So it says I've got a voicemail, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And I could call in and hear that voicemail, but actually, I'm just going to click on this in Office Communicator, one new voicemail message. And what that's going to do is bring up the voicemail message that I've received using Exchange Unified Messaging within Outlook. So I can go ahead and play that. I'm going to go ahead and play that through the audio here.
Jason, this is Ray. You don't seem to be responding to any of my emails. Did you read them? We need to act fast on this Fabricam thing, so hurry.
Well, it sounds like Ray might actually have something important for me to deal with, which would be a surprise. But it looks like I better actually go read those mails that I deleted from Ray. So what I meant to do before that I didn't was empty my deleted items folder, because I want to show you another feature that we've added in Service Pack 1 within Outlook Web Access, which is if I go to my options and I've deleted a mail, we can go to this deleted items option, and you can actually recover deleted items within Outlook Web Access. So before, this was a task that you'd have to guide users to do through Outlook itself. Now it can be done from anywhere through Outlook Web Access. So Ray in his voicemail, he actually mentioned that the Fabricam deal. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this Fabricam deal and click on Recover. That's going to bring the message back for me. I'm going to go ahead and go over to my deleted items. I'll just move it in my inbox here. I can just drag and drop that easily in my inbox. And I see the Fabricam deal mail is back here. And what Ray is telling me is that there's been a problem with the budget numbers, and I need to take a look at the numbers. And Ray says I can find these numbers in the SharePoint site that we have. Well, I may be away from my desk and potentially away from the office, but with Outlook Web Access 2007, you can have document access to SharePoint using the same credentials that I used to sign into Outlook Web Access with. So how many times do you receive a link or an email saying, hey, I want you to go check out this document on a SharePoint site, but you're remote and you can't get to it? Well, with this feature in Outlook Web Access, with document access, it solves the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Documents tab, and I'm going to open my SharePoint site. And what this is a document-centric view of the files that are stored on my SharePoint site. Now, he mentioned something about the Fabricam deal, and there's nothing actually in this folder about that. Well, Ray may forget that we also in this organization are storing information in public folders. And because public folders are available in Service Pack 1, I can switch over to my public folders, open my projects folder, go into Fabricam, and see here we've got a message saved where somebody sent a budget for Fabricam. Now, I want to open this document. It looks like it's an Excel spreadsheet that someone sent. But let's say I'm on the road, maybe I'm using a kiosk that doesn't have Office installed. Well, with what we call web-ready document viewing in Outlook Web Access, I can click on Open as Web Page next to this Office 2007 document and view that document as a web page. So this isn't loading Excel at all on my client. This is actually just viewing this document as a web page. So I can look here at my budget numbers, and I see clearly there's a problem down here because there's no money in the travel budget for the last 2 months. And clearly we're going to have to travel. So it looks like I better go back and set up a meeting with Ray to discuss this problem. So I'm going to switch over to my calendar view. And when I switch to my calendar view, you can see I have it in the monthly view. So in Service Pack 1 of Exchange 2007, within Outlook Web Access, we've added the monthly view. And one of the nice features of this monthly view is I can click on this little thing here on every day and get a quick view of what's listed on that day without actually switching completely to that day. So it gives me a great way to kind of scan all of the appointments within my calendar across the whole month. And so you can see there what I have scheduled every day. You know, workout from 8 to 9. Now, one thing on this appointment from 8 to 9 to work out, I have an appointment like this on my calendar, and I found that actually just putting the appointment on your calendar doesn't actually get you in any better shape. You have to actually go work out. So it's kind of funny how that works. So I'm going to set up this meeting with Ray because we really need to discuss this budget issue. And I'm going to add him into Outlook Web Access to my meeting request. I'm going to switch over to the scheduling assistant. And the scheduling assistant, and this is a feature of Exchange 2007, shows me very quickly which days are good days to meet and which days aren't so good to meet with Ray through this calendar over here. And I can see that on the 15th, that looks like a good day to meet with Ray. I'm sure I can find some time there. So I'm going to click on the 15th. I want to minimize this to only show working hours. So I'm going to click over on the 15th. We'll expand that. And it shows it's free busy here, but it also gives me some suggestions for good times to meet. Well, when we meet, I need a conference room, so I'm going to go over here to select rooms. I'm going to add all the recent rooms that I've used into the mix so that that's considered too when scheduling. It gives me some times to meet. I can meet at 8, 10, 2, 3. All those are good times. But I decided that this is a pretty big issue, and so we want to meet for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. So I'm going to switch my meeting to 2 hours. And when I do that, you can see that this calendar adjusts, my meeting suggestions adjust. It looks like at 2 o'clock, two of us are free, both of us are free. It's probably the best time to pick. So I'm going to go ahead and select that time, pick a conference room, and send to Ray. Nah, I didn't set a subject, that's fine. He'll know what it's about. Now, going through all this has actually been a little bit of work for me, and I'm getting kind of tired, and I'm kind of tired of dealing with Ray. And I've got some more stuff going on today. I've got, this important customer presentation going on right now, it turns out. There's an investor meeting coming up, dinner with a client. But I just want to clear my calendar. So one way I can clear my calendar is using Outlook Voice Access. So to show that, I'm going to put on this very attractive headset, and I'm going to use Office Communicator to call in to Exchange Unified Messaging. Now with Service Pack 1 of Exchange 2007 and with Office Communicator together, you can call in directly with Office Communicator to your voicemail system without having to enter a separate PIN. You're already authenticated with Office Communicator, it knows that, and when it calls into Outlook Voice Access, you're still authenticated. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say, call my voicemail.
Welcome. You're connected to Microsoft Exchange. You have no new voice messages and no new email messages. You currently have a meeting in progress with no location specified. Please say voicemail, email, calendar, personal contacts, directory, or personal options.
Calendar.
Sure. And which day shall I open?
Today.
Opening today's calendar. You have a meeting that you organized from 4 to 5 titled Important Customer Presentation with no location specified. You can say next, cancel meeting, meeting details, play header, clear my calendar, main menu, or more options.
Clear my calendar.
Okay, I can use cancel and decline to clear your appointments, starting with the current one. Just say a time of day to clear to, like 3:30 p.m., or a number of days, like 2 days. You can also say cancel to return to your calendar.
Today.
Thanks. 2 days. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. I'm about to send cancellation or decline messages for the meetings. Would you like to add a voice message to those?
No.
Your calendar's been cleared. You have no appointments remaining today. You can say next day or main menu.
Goodbye.
I heard you say goodbye. Do you want to end this phone call?
Sure.
Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
So with Outlook Voice Access, not only can you clear your calendar remotely using any telephone, but as you can see, it's also quite polite. So I really appreciate that. And in fact, if I go back here in Outlook Web Access and I refresh my calendar, I can see that it's cleared those appointments. So I'm going to switch back over to our slides now. Hopefully I got it this time. And I want to recap what we looked at in Anywhere Access and in Outlook Web Access in terms of what's new in SP1. So I covered a lot of these features that are on this list in the demo, but I want to talk about a couple of things that weren't in the demo that are new in SP1. The first thing is that we've extended the global reach of Outlook Web Access by adding additional languages for spell check. So we now have Arabic and Korean spell check within Outlook Web Access. Secondly, we heard from a number of organizations that rely on S/MIME to secure their communications. They rely on it for encryption and for signing of messages. And so we've added that capability back into Service Pack 1 within Outlook Web Access, so you can S/MIME encrypt emails. And lastly, for integration with line of business applications, we've added support for custom forms within Outlook Web Access. So that touches on primarily the end user benefits within SP1 for Anywhere Access. What this slide talks about is how Exchange Server 2007 plus Office Communications Server 2007 together provide a unified communication solution. There's primarily 4 points of integration between these two products. First, Exchange Server 2007 Unified Messaging supports something called Secure RTP. So with Exchange Server 2007, before the Service Pack, we were able to encrypt the SIP signaling channel between a server, an Exchange server, and a voice gateway, so that the signaling between those two could be secure. With Service Pack 1, in conjunction with Office Communications Server 2007, we can encrypt both that signaling channel and the voice media itself, so that any communications between Office Communicator and Exchange for example, someone leaving a voicemail, that communication stream can be secure when going across your network. The second investment area has to do with quality of service support. So any of the audio within Outlook Voice Access can be marked to provide high quality of service. And this basically places a header on the traffic that ensures that that voice traffic gets priority over your network. And this reduces the latency and increases the quality of the audio. Doing this actually requires the Windows quality of service, I forget the name of it. Doing this actually requires the Windows, Yes, the Windows Quality of Service Packet Scheduler. Such a beautiful name. I think that's where I forgot it. Which actually is part of Windows Server 2008, or can be installed separately on Windows Server 2003. The third investment area has to do with Communicator and having a message waiting indicator within Communicator. So this is the blinking light that I showed you in the demo, as well as enabling direct dial from Communicator to Outlook Voice Access without having to enter your password. And the last investment area is with Exchange's support for the RT audio codec that is used by Office Communications Server. So this gives you a higher quality and higher fidelity audio when someone leaves a voicemail using Office Communication, the Office Communicator. So these are some sessions that you can go to this week that drill into some of these anywhere access topics. So the first one on unified messaging is Wednesday with Brett Johnson and Anant Sundararajan. And this really takes an in-depth look at the main features of UM and then also talks in more detail about what's new in SP1. The second one here is about Outlook Web Access, and that's with Raj Mukherjee and Adam Glick, for actually joining us here in the front row. And this really covers things with Outlook Web Access beyond what I showed in terms of the new features, really digs deeper into things like the authentication, administration, migration issues, and deployment of Outlook Web Access. The last item on here, the Anywhere Access with Microsoft Windows Mobile 6, talks more broadly about Windows Mobile and unified communications, not just with Exchange, but also about how you can use Como and SharePoint on Windows Mobile, and touches on topics like content distribution on Windows Mobile and security with lots of good demos. So with that, I'm going to let Ray talk a bit about built-in protection.
Great, thanks. So the second pillar that we're on, built-in protection, in Exchange 2007, really delivered on three major pieces in this. One, with high availability through the introduction of continuous replication. And in 2007, there were two flavors. There was the local continuous replication that sits on the single server, and the cluster continuous replication to give you that high availability in a clustered environment, and having both not just the server availability, but also a complete service and data availability by maintaining two copies of the data, one on each of the nodes in the cluster. The next area is really around the protection from viruses and spam. And so here with Exchange 2007, working with Forefront on the server side to be able to protect on-premise and blocking those viruses and spam, and then also being able to use the hosted service to be able to block those in the cloud before the viruses even hit your infrastructure, so that you're not taking up computing cycles managing and filtering out those viruses. And then the last area was around compliance. And so this is where we introduced messaging records management, the ability to set quotas on particular folders, a folder-by-folder basis, manage that from the administration side, and delegate those out to your users so that your users have folders that have been pushed out by corporate, being able to go through and the users drag mail to those different folders, and by dragging those mails, having a different retention period per folder. The other piece in compliance is being able to set up rules and being able to create policies around how your mail is routed and how it's managed in transit. I'll actually go through a bit of a demo on some of the compliance features around the transit later. So with Service Pack 1, this is in the built-in protection. This is really an area where we've expanded on the features already delivered. And so taking a look at continuous replication and looking at the scenarios that we covered, being able to fill some of the features that we didn't have at release. So with Service Pack 1, we introduced standby continuous replication. And that allows us to have a lot of the advantages of the cluster continuous replication, but without the cluster. So it gives us the ability to have two different servers and manage copies of the database on each server, but not have the overhead of the cluster, but also not having the automatic failover capability. Additionally, we've got a lot of feedback from particularly our government customers around some high security pieces, and so with Service Pack 1, we introduce a lot of components for defense messaging support. And then lastly, with Exchange ActiveSync policies. And with Exchange 2003 Service Pack 2, that's the first release that we really introduced policies and the ability to manage your devices through Exchange. With 2007, we expanded that policy set, allowing you to encrypt storage cards, have stronger password protection on the device. With Service Pack 1, again, expanding those features and that capability, the ability to now lock down Wi-Fi or turn off SMS, or also ensure that no other emailing application could be running on that device. So that way, your users using that device are only using the corporate email. And this is a way to protect the intellectual property that is on that device, the email that's been loaded on there, and making sure that it doesn't go out by other means. So it's really having that mobile device and securing and making it compliant, just like you have your desktop and your other means to access Exchange. Now, we've had a number of customer quotes on our slides, but this one in particular I'd love to point out, because it is such a great quote, that from Lieutenant Colonel Wallington from the U.S. Army. The secure system for him is not just about cost savings, it's not just about securing the information, but it's also about saving lives.
So with that, I'm going to do a demo of Exchange ActiveSync, and I'll let Ray introduce the talk here that's related to this later while I switch it over.
Cool.
So this is the Exchange Management Console, and I'm here under the organization configuration on the client access area. And you can see that I've loaded up the Exchange ActiveSync mailbox policies here. And I've got two policies. I've got a default policy, and then I've got a special policy that I've created for the sales department. And so I'm going to open this policy that I've created for the sales department to show you some of the options that are available with Service Pack 1. Now, the sales folks have all been given ActiveSync-enabled phones. But the legal department is a little concerned at the company. Why is the legal department concerned? Because the sales folks have been taking the cameras on those phones, they've been going around to competitors, taking pictures of what the competitors are doing, and sending those pictures on their phones. And so the legal department does want to put a stop to this. So we're going to see if there's a policy that could help them there. With Service Pack 1, we've added some additional complexity in terms of the password that you can enforce on a device. So with Exchange ActiveSync policies before, you could require a PIN on the device before someone could access it. And there's some additional password complexity we can support here. So you can require an alphanumeric password now and even set the minimum length for that in terms of how many other characters you need there. So for a very security-conscious organization that wants a stricter password on the device, we have that capability. Now this next tab is really about the sync settings and what you can set to control how devices sync with the server. You can indicate how many of the past calendar or email items the device should or can sync. You can limit the message size that gets synced. So maybe for performance or for network reasons, you want to limit the size that these devices sync. Maybe you're charged by the byte, and so as an organization, you want to make sure that they're not syncing too many. You can also indicate whether HTML mail is allowed with the device or not. But that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is actually over here on the Device tab, which is a complete new set of settings for Service Pack 1. Whether you allow removable storage on the device, Wi-Fi, infrared, Bluetooth, etc. But what I'm really interested for in this case is disabling the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and disable the camera. And then last, over here, a new set of security policy settings for ActiveSync devices for SP1. And these settings actually light up in the next version of Windows Mobile. But some of these other settings are whether the browser is allowed, consumer mail, and even particular applications that you either want to allow or block on the device. So those are the IT-focused enhancements we've made around ActiveSync security. I actually want to show this as well from an end-user perspective. So I'm going to switch over to my account, the same one that I was doing the demos on before. And you can see here that I actually have a phone open here, hooked up to my machine. It's the same one against the same account I was using. You can see where it says time reserved by Outlook voice access. That's the cancellation that I did, the clearing of my calendar. And you can see the next time I'm supposed to work out is on Wednesday. So hopefully I remember that. So with that, I'm actually going to go into Outlook Web Access. And you know, I don't know about you, but I'm actually really bad about holding on to my phone. And I tend to lose it quite a bit at work, actually, in various meeting rooms or such. But if you're traveling and you lose your phone, that's actually a pretty significant security issue, especially if it has a lot of your significant business data in terms of email and calendar on that device. Well, we recognize this very early on, and this is why Exchange Server 2007 already has the feature of being able to wipe a device remotely. But I want to talk about some of the enhancements to that feature in 2007. So if I go into Outlook Web Access, there's a section here for mobile devices. And you can see my devices listed here. Well, let's say that I've actually lost my phone. If I lost my phone, I can go in here as an end user, or when I call the help desk, they can tell me to go in here as an end user. And I can say I want to wipe all data from this device. Are you sure you want to wipe all data from this device? Yes, I'm sure. So I'm going to click OK on there. And what's going to happen is the next time that my device syncs, which if my device is set up for always up-to-date access, it will receive a message from the server that tells it to wipe. So you can see that process is actually starting to happen here because I can't actually switch back over to my phone. It's showing the cached picture there, but it actually says no response from the device. And the reason it's getting no response from the device is because it's actually starting through that wipe process. So let it finish this wipe process here. And while that wipe is happening, actually, if I suddenly find my phone and it hasn't wiped yet, I can also go in here in Outlook Web Access and cancel the wipe request. So my phone is actually starting to reboot now because it's gone through that wipe process. And if I can go back to my mail in Outlook Web Access, or actually you can see this notification that I got in Outlook because I also have Outlook open on here. I actually just received that confirmation from the server that my device was wiped successfully. So as a user, I know I issued this wipe command, it actually succeeded. And this confirmation is something that's new for Service Pack 1.
Great. So these ActiveSync policies, this is something that you can take a look at in this session that's over in a tent, which I guess we have tents now at these sessions. But on Friday, 9 a.m., and this is Jason Langridge is going to be presenting this. He'll go through some more of the ActiveSync policies. We'll also look at top security concerns, how to get around them, some best practices, technical guidance in mobility. So it's a good session if you were interested in more around the ActiveSync policies and mobile device management, it's a good one to go to. So to summarize those components was that the? Oh, okay. So to summarize those components in the built-in protection, first around mobility. Jason mentioned earlier that SMIME support in Outlook Web Access. There's also SMIME support in the Windows Mobile with Exchange Service Pack 1 and the next release of the Windows Mobile operating system. So, and then also, as Jason showed you, the remote device wipe confirmation is new with Service Pack 1. So I am comfortable in knowing that my device has been wiped. I can sleep soundly. And then we saw some of the ActiveSync policies. With some of the new security components, we're supporting Windows Server 2008 with Exchange Server 2007 Service Pack 1, and with that we get support for IPv6. We also, with cluster continuous replication, and with standby continuous replication, our log files that are generated and are copied can now be copied across and shipped across private networks. So we're securing that so we know that those log files are a more secure network.
Yeah, and this has been a compliance concern, in some areas, is that, people want to make sure that when they're shipping those log files across to other locations, for compliance reasons, they need to keep those secure. So.
And a feature in 2007 in beta 2, so we had a technical preview of this, which was very popular, but definitely needs to be done right. And so we're dedicated to shipping with quality. And so this feature we did not ship in 2007. We've given it more time to cook with Service Pack 1. And so IRM prefetching from the transport makes it faster for you to get to your rights protected messages by the transport actually getting those certificates for you early on. So looking at going a bit deeper on continuous replication, because this is one of the key pieces for 2007, and again, one of the largest investment areas in Service Pack 1. Just a quick review again with local continuous replication. This is really around having a single server and having your log files on that single server, possibly different disk systems connected to that single server. And your log files are as users are experiencing their mail and creating new mail, new log files are generated and replayed against that second copy. And so in the case that you have some disk failures or corruption in that database, you're able to quickly fail over to that second copy within that server. However, that doesn't give you protection against an actual server outage. And so that's where we introduce cluster continuous replication. And this uses the Microsoft clustering model and allows you to have active-passive pairings of Exchange. And so you'll have an active mailbox server with your mailbox database or databases sitting on that server. And as messages come through, the log files are created and they're shipped across to the passive node and replayed there. The cluster allows you to automatically fail over from that active node to the passive node, and it's a symmetric failover. So you can fail back, and you can make that passive node the active node, and then return the active node to a passive. So you can have both of those servers. Both are capable of becoming an active node. And then with Service Pack 1, we introduced the idea of the standby. And so within that single site, you could if you were a more medium-sized organization, you didn't want the management overhead or the complexity around clustering, and you're okay with manually failing over, so not having that automatic failover that you get with cluster, you can stand up 2 independent servers and have your log files replayed to that second server. And in the case that your first server goes down, you can run a script and you can manually just switch your users over to this second server. So it's more of a disaster recovery type solution, or a poor man's high availability solution. When we look at the cluster continuous replication and we look at the standby continuous replication, we have this capability of mixing and matching this replication technology. So you can actually have a cluster continuous replication running in your primary data center. And so for maintenance or server outages, you can go ahead and have that failover within that single site. And then what you can do is, hanging off your passive node on the cluster continuous replication, you can have a standby continuous replication server. You can have that server located in a different geography. This allows you then to, in the case of an entire site going down, fail over as a disaster recovery solution to that standby server. So it gives you that extra added protection from cluster continuous replication as your high availability, and then using standby continuous replication as your disaster recovery. Now, another thing to note here is that I've just noted one standby continuous replication, but I can actually have multiple standby servers coming off of that passive node. So that can allow me to have them located in multiple geographies. It can allow me to also configure to lag the replay of the log files, so that one might be always up to date, another one might be 3 days behind or a week behind. So I can also use that in the place that a lot of disk backups are made, so that in the case of some corruptions or accidents, deleting entire mailboxes you didn't mean to and not catching it right away, you can go back in time and replay logs up to the point that you wanted to. So I'm going to go and walk through this a little bit. This is the model of how all of the continuous replications works, but in particular standby. So your users are connected to your primary server. They're sending and receiving messages, and as they're sending and receiving messages, log files are created. And as these log files, which are 1 meg in size, as they're generated, the continuous replication, the replication service actually copies those log files across to the standby server and places the log files in a directory there. Now, this is actually a pull service, so the load is coming up from that second server to pull those log files across. Now, as those log files come in, they're then inspected to make sure that there's no corruption, the log files have integrity, and then they can then, at that point, be replayed against the standby server. Now, like I mentioned, you can configure that replay, so you can lag that replay behind, and you can either have it instantly replaying, or you can configure it 3 days, a week, etc. Now, in the case that primary server goes down, since it's not a cluster continuous replication, we don't have a quorum. We don't know which server is up or down. It then is a manual process by the administrator to run a script. And now this script here, this activate standby.ps1, it represents about 5 actual command lines to get run that set the standby server to active, make sure that all of your other server roles know that this new server is the one that they should point mail to, and then your users can connect to it.
And then again, this is manual, but with a clustering solution, that would not be a manual process. But the point here is that we can scale depending on the cost and complexity and the SLA that you want to deliver around Exchange, you have a wide range of solutions to choose from.
So some recommended sessions. I know that was a very quick run through of continuous replication. We actually have 2 sessions just dedicated to everything that I just spoke about right there. So Becky Benfield is going to have back-to-back sessions in room 112, which is not a tent. And those sessions are going to go through, the first one is really going to go through local continuous replication, cluster continuous replication, also the single copy cluster, which was more the traditional clustering. And then the second one will actually go into more of the disaster recovery and site level recovery models. And I mentioned just 1 or 2 such examples of how you can configure standby continuous replication against cluster continuous replication. She'll go into more detail about all those capabilities, the ability for it to do one active to many standbys, or even many actives to a single standby, and how that works and why you would want to do this. And then I didn't touch too much in the compliance area. We have a whole session around that on Friday. That'll go through some transport rules, as well as it'll go through messaging records management. And lastly, we have a session around security. So it's going to go into more detail around SMIME, and also around antivirus and anti-spam. So we're on the last pillar here, so we're getting to our home stretch. We have operational efficiency, and with Exchange Server 2007, I mentioned earlier the improved installation and deployment experience. This is really around the introduction of the 5 server roles. And now those server roles can be installed on a single server, so you still have that option, or spread across in your environment. And this was really out of looking at how you were deploying Exchange 2003, and how you were taking our back ends and our front ends and modifying the configurations to be very purpose-driven to certain roles. And so looking at those topologies and looking at those configurations, we came up with these 5 server roles.
In fact, you heard earlier in the keynote about how they're doing this in Windows 2008, and how they have specific rules that you can deploy a file server or other specific roles. And I'd like to think that they got that idea from us first, because we did it first. So.
One of the other things that we led was 64-bit, and so we went native 64-bit support. And by doing this, we were able to take advantage of optimizations in the JET database, and that allowed us to reduce our I/O footprint, and in some cases reduce it up to 70%. And so this improvement was mainly due to the increase in the cache size, so taking advantage of more memory that you get through 64-bit, of being able to have more addressable memory. Lastly was the new management paradigm, and again, as Jason mentioned in the keynote, we saw a bit of the PowerShell, and we were one of the first servers to be based on PowerShell, and so absolutely anything that you can do to configure or manage Exchange can be done in this PowerShell, and so we built all of the business logic into the tasks that are in the Exchange Management Shell, which is built on PowerShell. And then the Exchange Management Console, completely rewritten to take advantage of those PowerShell. So everything that you're doing in that Management Console, whenever you're clicking, whenever you're going through wizards, or even just querying objects, all of that is actually running command line in the background. And we'll actually even see in the graphical interface, you'll even see some of those scripts come through. Now in Service Pack 1, we're building support for Windows Server 2008 and Windows Vista support. And so as an administrator, if you want to run the Management Console and the Management Shell, if you want to run those on your workstation, you can now run those on Vista to manage Exchange 2007. Jason showed you some of the self-service aspects with Outlook Web Access, and so some of these things, such as being able to manage personal distribution lists, recovered deleted items. These are all things that although very end-user focused, do remove some of those help desk calls and some of that pressure off of you as an administrator to do this on behalf of the user. Lastly, as we've gone through service packs in the past, we have definitely gotten feedback around Slipstream. And so with 2007 Service Pack 1, it is a full Slipstream installation, so you do not need to install 2007 first. You can go straight to Service Pack 1. All of the 2007 bits are included within the Service Pack. So with that, switch to a demo of managing Exchange. So okay, great. So here we are. This is where Jason left us off. He was in the Exchange Management Console looking at the client access. So this new management paradigm. The first thing that you'll notice is in the left-hand tree. I've got all of the levels exploded out. So significantly cleaned up the left-hand navigation model. Split things into organization configuration, server configuration, and recipient configuration. The org configuration is really around configuring policies that go across all of the servers in the organization. So things like the policies, things like transport rules, which I'll go into later. Server configuration, this is split out by the actual server roles. And so here, for example, the mailbox server role, this is where I would go to manage my databases, my storage groups, so server by server specific configuration that you need by the server that you're actually choosing to manage. And then recipient configuration is a lot of the tasks that you used to do within Active Directory pulled into the management console, so you have a single place to go and for managing email, to manage all the properties for those users. So in the center area, as I've clicked on these, you've seen the work pane has changed, and so a lot of these pieces used to be extra levels within the tree, but by having this work pane, that then does allow me to go into more granular detail for each of the objects that I select in the tree. The other thing to notice is this right-hand, this actions. So anything that I do in terms of right-clicking on users, these actions I also can see through the right-hand navigation. So they're discoverable without me having to right-click on every object to see if I can do something to it.
This is another thing that I thought was interesting from the keynote this morning, and some of the management consoles that we saw is that across Microsoft are adopting a lot of the ideas that we first introduced with the Exchange Management Console in Exchange 2007. So if you're an Exchange administrator, you're learning how to use Exchange, you kind of got a leg up on everybody else on how to use the rest of Microsoft's management products.
Great. So with me sending email to Jason all the time and him ignoring it, I'm going to demote Jason to be my administrative assistant. And as part of that demotion, he needs to be able to send email on my behalf. And so this is new to Service Pack 1, is the ability to manage send as permissions. And so I can quickly go in and choose me, Ray Mormon. There we go. And now Jason has the ability to go ahead and send emails on my behalf.
You better watch what I might send on your behalf. That's such a good idea.
Now, it's items like this that we've gotten feedback on through the management console. Like Jason said, we did a rewrite, and so there were some components that we looked at as being advanced administration functionality that was command line only with 2007. And with Service Pack 1, we've introduced pieces like this back into the management console. So other areas to note would be like POP and IMAP, managing POP IMAP. Another area would be some cluster administration, that being able to administer some of your cluster servers instead of going strictly to the Microsoft cluster management. And also, a new area with 2007 was the toolbox, which had all of your web release tools. So your most common ones, the ones that you use, like Exchange Best Practice Analyzer, which I'm sure all of you run against your environment to proactively catch possible configuration errors or mistakes to make sure that those don't rear their ugly head later. We've added public folder management into this toolbox, and so you now have a graphical user interface in Service Pack 1 to manage those public folders. You can see the actions I can take on these folders. Update content, remove. I can also drill into the individual properties. I can look at the replication, limits, etc. So there's a lot of management components that I can do against public folders that in 2007 out of the gate we had only as command line. So next I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my management console here, back to recipient configuration. Another area that was new is again, like creating new users. I can create new users through the management console. I've been able to do that in 2007. I can also, those users, I can either have them as information workers, as real users, or I can also set them up as resources, so rooms, equipment, and these are separate in Active Directory so that when I'm searching for rooms, or as Jason's demo where he added all recent rooms, it knows that it's a room resource, it's a conference room, and not an individual user. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new user. Now, when I go through this wizard, first thing you'll notice in this left hand here is the navigation, where I'm at, the map, so I know that I'm not going to get into an endless screen of wizards by clicking next, and when will this thing end? I know how far along I am in the process. I know how many more next I have to hit. I can create a new user, which would create the objects in Active Directory for me, or if they've already been created in Active Directory and I want to mail enable them, I can select the ones that I want in here and go ahead and add them. Now this is new in Service Pack 1, is the ability to multiple select. So I can actually enable multiple users at one time through the management console. So go ahead and enable those. I'm going to choose the mailbox database. And these are going to be new sales folks. So Jason earlier had created an active sync policy. I can select that active sync policy for those users. I'm going to select the sales policy. And now all of these new users I've provisioned on email, right away they can start using Active Sync on their mobile devices. They can start getting their mail there, and they're going to be secure. As soon as they start syncing those email messages, the first thing that's going to do is load those device policies.
And they won't be able to use their camera.
Yeah, I'll turn off the camera.
Turn off the camera.
Now you'll notice here that as I went through this wizard, it completed successfully, which was good, but it also gave me the equivalent command line. And so this is a good way to start learning the PowerShell. So I can start looking at what actually went on behind the scenes, and I can start copying and pasting that and playing around with those in PowerShell. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my PowerShell, and we'll just play around in here just a little bit. So to show you that creating new users, I can do this in the PowerShell as well as in the graphical user interface. I'm going to create a new mailbox, and I know that I need to give it a name, and so I'm going to call it compliance. And this is I'm going to use this mailbox later on in a compliance scenario. So we're going to create it new here, and we're going to need it later on in the demo. Now, I'm supposed to put in the organizational unit, which is a lot to type out. But luckily for me, even within the parameters within the command line, I'm able to do tab completion. So that makes it a lot easier, especially if I'm up here on stage. I can have fat fingers and mistype something. Let's see here. User principal is another really long parameter, but tab completion's helping me out. Compliance at litwarebank.com. And I go ahead and I can create my new mailbox. Now, I ended up not putting all the parameters I needed, but instead of getting an ugly error message and stepping me through the parameters I might have missed, it's actually going to go ahead and prompt me for these parameters. So I can go ahead and just enter those in, which is nice in case you forget a few things. There we go. Now this time, it'll create the mailbox for me. Hopefully. There we go. Great. And so now what it's done is it's gone out and it's created that in Active Directory as well as mailed and enabled this this user. Now let's go ahead and I created some new sales folks. I added those to the Active Sync policy. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the some existing sales folks that we had set up earlier. So those folks. I had put them in the organizational unit called sales. And so it looks like I have a good number of those users here. Now, what I want to know though is I've got my list of my sales folks, but how many of them or who has what policy associated with them? So with this with the output of that command, I can actually use multiple commands in conjunction. So I can pipe the results, and so it's the full rich results of my query. I can pipe that to another command. And so for this, I'm going to go to the get CAS mailbox, and the get CAS mailbox will return a lot of information for me based on those users. But what I want is actually just the name and the Active Sync policy. Active Sync mailbox policy. And so this gives me a list, and it looks like Andy Jacobs is the only one that's provisioned with the sales policy. So I'm going to go ahead and correct that. Set. Actually, set
so those of you out there that are already running Exchange 2007, how many of you are using the command line to this extent already? Okay, so probably about a third of what I saw before.
So go ahead and set that, and as I expect, Andy Jacobs already was already set to that, and I go ahead and requery, and I get that full list. And so here in the management shell, I'm not I'm doing some pretty interesting things in terms of automation and getting some lists back, but I'm not actually scripting. These are all just one-line commands, and so there's a lot that you can do in the shell before you actually have to get to the level of scripting to accomplish some tasks, some common tasks. So I'm going to switch back to the management console here, and so I created that new mailbox, the compliance officer, and what I want to do is I want to make sure that these sales folks, even though their device is secured now, I want to see what they're up to. So I'm going to have a sales compliance policy put into play, and we've decided that they're not supposed to talk about the competitor Contoso. We want to make sure that any conversations that they have about this competitor, that they're not infringing on that competitor's trade secrets. So I'm going to go ahead and say any mail that's from the folks that are in sales, I want to take an action on them. So I have a new transport rule, and so any member of a particular distribution list, in this case our Litware sales teams, and if they say anything about Contoso, so that means I need to find something that has when a subject or the body of the message contains specific words, and so I can put keywords in here. So if I have that, I can then take, I have my condition set, I can then take actions on those. So I could do things like, I could decide to redirect the message, I could block the message entirely, I could classify it. There's a lot of different actions I can take, but for my particular policy, I want those messages to be reviewed by a compliance officer. So I'm going to go ahead and add our new user in here. And even though, as you'd expect, I created this in PowerShell, but of course the object's available to me in the management console because it's built right on top of PowerShell. So there we go. I've now set up my new policy, and it's completed, again giving me my management shell results. So now if I go ahead and...
So I would like to make sure that we have a couple minutes for questions at the end of the session. So if we want to jump ahead and do a couple more of the slides and get to a point where we can allow for a few questions, I'd like to make some time for that. Sound good?
Sure.
Great. So I'm going to switch back over here. You want to?
Yeah. So this just to review the final pieces on operational efficiency. The one thing to note here, we didn't look at the POP and IMAP. We saw some of the new management pieces though. In the management shell, there's new components around importing and exporting messages. So you're now able to export mailboxes, use rich search criteria, and export those to PST files or to other mailboxes. We've also, as we've introduced these new features, we've extended the web services that are available to it. Let's go ahead to the next slide. With Windows, recommended sessions with Windows Server 2007 and SP1 with Server 2008. So one thing around the clustering with cluster continuous replication, in 2007 we have the restriction that they have to be within the same subnet. With Windows Server 2008 clustering, they've removed that restriction. So if you're using Windows Server 2008 and Service Pack 1, you're able to have geographically dispersed clusters without that limitation of having to stretch that subnet. We've talked about IPv6, and then also you saw today that the PowerShell is integrated, and also the latest MMC integrated into Windows Server 2008. So supporting that management paradigm that we built on, and making it easier to install because those components are already there.
So I want to recap what we looked at in Service Pack 1 and go back to those themes at the beginning. Again, anywhere access is about getting that rich Outlook experience, whether it's your desktop, using a web browser, using a mobile device. And what I showed today is how we've integrated unified messaging with Office Communicator. You can get that message waiting indicator in Communicator. You can direct dial to Outlook voice access without having to enter a PIN. I showed how some of the things that users do in Outlook are now available in Outlook Web Access, like recovering deleted items, for example, or managing personal distribution lists, and showed public folder access within Outlook Web Access. With built-in protection, Ray talked about standby continuous replication and how we have replication and disaster recovery capabilities built directly into the product. And with operational efficiency, we talked about how with Exchange 2007 SP1, we take advantage of the investments that you make in Windows Server 2008 and Windows Vista. So we have a number of customers worldwide that have already deployed the product, and we want to get you to that point as well. And so we have a session right after this one with Scott Schnoll, who's going to talk about Exchange Server 2007 SP1 deployment planning.
So another thing to note around the evaluation, we have obviously the 64-bit, 32-bit versions that you can download and try. If you try the 64-bit evaluation, you like it, you've configured it, you're ready to go, you can actually turn that into a deployment by just entering in a product key. So you can go straight from proof of concept to production. The other thing is that the demos that we did, especially the management console demos, this was actually done on a virtual hard drive image that we downloaded from Microsoft.com. So this virtual hard drive image is already loaded with users and sample email, etc. So if you just really want to kick the tire and take a look at some of the management components, you can download that and get going right away.
So I want to remind everybody, well, first of all, if anybody did not enjoy the session, go ahead and cover your ears. And then I want to remind everybody else to go fill out the evaluation after the session. I think everybody can truthfully say this was the best breakout session they've attended so far at this conference. So everybody can say that honestly, but we appreciate your feedback from this session. And so we want to take a few minutes for questions. There's microphones on both sides for anybody that has any questions about 2007 and SP1, so take a walk up to either of these microphones if you're interested in asking a question. And we also have a couple other team members here to answer questions. So as soon as I see someone step up, we'll start. Okay, so I got one over here.
Hi, we use different mobile devices in our organization, some Windows mobile, some non-Windows. Will this work with the non-Windows mobile devices for controlling them?
So when you're talking about non-Windows mobile devices, are these
Symbian.
and it's using Exchange ActiveSync?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these new features require the Exchange ActiveSync for Service Pack 1, and so most likely the Symbian phones that you have right now would not be using this version of the ActiveSync. But we strongly encourage our partners to take up those components, and so I would expect them in the future to leverage that on their newer phones. However, some of these policies some of the older 2007 policies do work with their phones.
Thanks.
So it looks like, do we have somebody on the mic on this side?
Yes, I would like to ask about which type of email compression we could use in Exchange 2007 for mobile device or ActiveSync, because for example, I'm a telecommunication company. We have BlackBerry services, and we have Microsoft Bushmail. Always we hear, and actually it's real. And BlackBerry is very fast in delivery emails and this, and we use Exchange server. But BlackBerry is very fast because they have high compression for mails. Do we have anything to support this in 2007?
I don't know the answer to that, but if you do come up, I have one of our Windows Mobile guys up in the front, and he can definitely answer that question for you, or can try to answer that question for you.
Take one more over here.
Hello, I have two questions, but one is very, very easy.
Okay.
By Windows Vista support, do you mean you can run the console and this PowerShell engine to manage the server?
That's right, yeah.
That's right. And then what about the NLB support in Service Pack 1? There are many limitations in the network load balancing support today for client access support and for hub and transport.
Actually, I'll have Scott take that one. I think he was looking at me, so.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay, you should be able to hear me. So we are adding an enhancement with respect to NLB and Service Pack 1. Specifically, we're introducing the ability to use NLB on the client connectors on the hub transport server. So right now with the RTM version, NLB is for the client access server only. We're extending NLB to the client connectors on the hub transport server.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll take another question over here.
Can the user share the calendars through the Outlook Web Access?
So the question was if users can share their calendars through Outlook Web Access with SP1, and the answer is no.
No, you said or yes? No?
No. Go ahead.
Question is it possible to set a flag on a message using Outlook Voice Access?
Is it possible to send a...
The flag on the message. The task.
Oh, flagged message.
Yes.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you
so,
can send with
So I
high
think
priority.
you say flag with high importance or mark with high priority when you're sending.
No,
that
I
message.
mean exactly the flag. No, not the high importance, but exactly the flag on the message to track it.
Oh, the follow-up flag. Is that? What
Yeah, follow-up flag.
Oh, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. So
Thanks.
Can you
So
flag it for high
we should
importance?
no, we should probably just take questions up.
So well, if there's other questions, well, actually, if you want to go ahead and come up here,